author, an advocate, and the director of the Indigenous Screen Office. I'm super excited to talk to you today, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us on the program, Mr. Jesse Wente.
Oh, thanks so much.
What were the things that you watched as a kid in cartoons?
Jetsons, Flintstones, all that sort of stuff. But in terms of the stuff that sticks out, the Warner Brothers cartoons, I mean, I think I learned most things about culture from those cartoons.
Right, and I mean, we're talking about the classics, the 1940s.
Yeah.
The culture back then, boy, oh boy.
Now, let's have a look at that little old scalp. Well, I think we can fix that up okay.
The things that they were not able to get away with, but the things that they were considered normal.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they weren't getting away with anything. It was just standard.
That's just what it was.
Yeah. And the one that probably sticks out most is the Bugs Bunny episode where Bugs is firing out of the fort and he counts off 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians.
4 little, 5 little, 6 little Injuns.
Oh, that one was a half-breed?
Uh-oh, sorry, that one was a half-breed.
All of that would have been just shown at breakfast cereal hour.
10 little Injun boys.
For me, there was an episode of the Flintstones where Betty and Wilma go get judo lessons from a
judo chop chop.
Judo chop chop.
I remember that episode.
Etc.
What is etc. mean in Japanese?
For kids like us growing up, that was the only identification that we had of our heritage and background in our favorite cartoon shows.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think, Eric, for me, it's also an indication that they never pictured us as the audience.
Right.
They never imagined that anyone from these communities would ever actually watch these shows.
Right, have access to...
Right, and of course, for Indigenous people, I think that's why we're represented across popular culture, not just in animation, but in movies, literature, sports mascots, in some ways that other communities weren't, precisely because the belief at the time those things were created was we wouldn't be around. In fact, the public policy of both America and Canadian governments at the time was to get rid of us.
Right.
So there was every reason to believe no one from this community is ever actually going to watch these games.
Amigos.
You know, with like Speedy Gonzalez, you know, I talk to most people who are of Latin and Mexican descent, and most will tell me, no, don't get rid of him because this is all we have. So are we to settle for this is all we have, even though it's wrong?
For sure, there's a photo of me as a 13-year-old kid wearing a Washington Redskins hat. In terms of Indigenous representation in media, there was none.
Zero.
Except for those logos. So if you wanted to have yourself reflected at all, you clung to that. So I completely understand why someone would say, don't get rid of Speedy Gonzalez. I think they actually need to be preserved as reminders. Do I think they should be uncritically shown to children over their breakfast cereal? Of course not. I certainly am not going to sit here and say I want Bugs Bunny to go away. Bugs Bunny was a huge part of my life. I loved those cartoons. And I was so depressed when I started to have my own children.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, let's watch some Warner Brothers cartoons. And the ones that are broadcast now of those originals are very edited.
Oh, absolutely.
To the point of incoherence. And there was a part of me that, I wish they could see some of that stuff, even if it meant I had to talk them through it.
Sure.
Society shifts, our mores and morals, the things that we actually agree on shift over time. And suddenly depictions, language are no longer acceptable. None of this is black and white. None of this is to say you can't make a Filipino cartoon if you're not Filipino. Probably means there's a way to do that that might be better than the way we used to do it.
Right.
Maybe figuring out how to get those communities to do it themselves is the better way.
Right.
When communities gain access, they make more interesting stories. That talent gets brought in and sort of becomes the new mainstream.
Flourishes.
Yeah,
you know?
right. And suddenly, 10 years later, we're like, it's totally changed, and it's because we've absorbed this, and that's what's happening right now. This is progress. There was not a TV show when I was a kid where a Filipino guy and an Anishinaabe guy are sitting talking. One's in a Beavis and Butthead sweater, and we're talking about animation. That's not a thing that existed in the 80s, but we're here. So we actually have to make sure we acknowledge, because our aunties and uncles fought really hard to get us to where we could do this in this way. It's our obligation to continue that fight. Maybe I'm optimistic because that is my day job, is to ensure that we don't go back.
Thank God for people like you. And I, for one, can't wait for our Canadian Screen Award as Best Filipino Anishinaabe Duo. And only nominees, only one category. We might only ever have that one award. Well, what an amazing conversation that only you and I could have. I really appreciate your time here with us, Mr. Wente.